That's where our real protection comes from. It doesn't matter what the enemy has in their arsenal as long as you got God on your side. So again, these enemies of Israel, they're plotting against God even. And they definitely aren't going to succeed. If you're plotting against God, you're not going to win. Good morning. Welcome to the Shasta Valley Christian Fellowship. This morning we're in Psalms 20 and 21. The reason I'm putting these two together is one, Psalm 20 is very short. But also they do kind of go together. Psalms 20, the people are praying because David's about to go up against, or Israel is about to go up against an enemy in a battle. And so they're praying for David's victory in this. Psalm 21 is after the battle. He's won, and they're rejoicing, and they're praising God for the victory in the battle. So without any other ado, let's go and jump into Psalms 20. Or Psalm 20, I should say. Psalm 20, verse 1. Actually, I'll start off with the title. Psalm 20. For the director of music, a psalm of David. Verse 1. May the Lord answer you when you are in distress. May the name of the God of Jacob protect you. May he send you help from the sanctuary and grant you support from Zion. May he remember all your sacrifices and accept your burnt offerings. May he give you the desire of your heart and make all your plans succeed. May we shout for joy over your victory and lift up our banners in the name of our God. May the Lord grant all your requests. Now this I know, the Lord gives victory to his anointed. He answers him from his heavenly sanctuary with the victorious power of his right hand. Some trust in chariots and some in horses, but we trust in the name of the Lord our God. They are brought to their knees and fall, but we rise up and stand firm. Lord, give victory to the King. Answer us when we call. So like I said, it's a very short psalm. It's kind of interesting to me, though, in that David is so believing in the power of prayer that he writes this song so the people can pray for him in his battle. Because he knows that, like I said, he believes in the power of prayer. So he believes that by these people praying this for him, God will give him the victory. Back to verse 1, though. May the Lord answer you when you are in distress, and may the name of the God of Jacob protect you. We should all be able to pray that when we are in distress. We are in something that seems completely hopeless. We should be able to pray, Lord, protect me. And he will. Sometimes he might protect you by taking you home. The other times he might bring you out of whatever that is because he's got another job for you yet, another task for you. May he send you help from the sanctuary and grant you support from Zion. May you remember all your sacrifices and accept your burnt offerings. This was pretty common for the people of Israel. Especially if there was something major going on, they'd offer a sacrifice to God. But even then, it didn't have to be that. It could also be, they had the yearly sacrifices. But the people could just go up and offer a sacrifice to God because they were looking for a blessing on something. There were a lot of different reasons for bringing up these sacrifices.
And what were they sacrificing? A sheep or a lamb?
It depended on the situation.
It depended on what they were sacrificing it for. There was what they called offerings. There was fellowship offerings. There was, if they had sinned, there was a different offering. So it did really depend.
It would be found in Leviticus to find
Yeah.
out. Yeah, okay.
If you had a male child as your firstborn child, you offered up a sacrifice for that.
Yeah.
It also depended on their income as well, because there's different things. So the more money you'd have, the more of it.
Yeah, so if you had a male child, I think the sacrifice, I can't remember if it was a bull or a lamb, but there was the option, if you're poor, to offer up a dove or two doves, which is important because when it came time for them to present Jesus, they offered up two doves, which tells us that Jesus came from a very poor family. He didn't come from a well-to-do family. Yeah. So our sacrifices, we do our tithing. You might give above and beyond that to some charity or whatever that you like. But you can also you can live your life as a sacrifice. You can deny yourself so that you can use that time to help someone else or help out some other cause that you want to be part of. So may it give you the desires of your heart and make all your plans succeed. This can be a kind of a slippery slope. Now, if you're doing your best to walk with God and you're walking with His will, then yes, may He give you the desires of your heart. But if you're not walking with God and you're just off pleasing yourself, then I don't think that's a very good prayer. Because giving you the desire of your heart might lead you further from God. Might lead you further into sin.
I never thought of that. I always did lean on those, that God put those desires in our heart, and He cares about what we want.
So may we shout for joy over your victory and lift up our banners in the name of our God. May the Lord grant all your requests. If we approach our battles from the standpoint that we've already won, you have an advantage going into that, as opposed to approaching a battle thinking you've already been defeated. There's like a whole mental attitude thing that plays a big part in what you're doing. So if it doesn't have to be a physical battle, it could be social battles. I really don't like large crowds of people. And I try to avoid that, and I'll try to get off my side. But if I go into a large crowd of people thinking I'm going to be really uncomfortable, then I guarantee you I will be very uncomfortable. If I go in that large crowd of people and I start thinking, I want to talk to this person, I want to take care of this and do this, then I will have victory in that minor little battle, right? And notice the shift here in verse 6, because before it's the group, it's Israel talking. But it looks like it shifts to David now in verse 6. It says, "Now this I know, the Lord gives victory to His anointed. He answers him from His heavenly sanctuary with the victorious power of His right hand." That's one thing that David is kind of known for. When he went up against Goliath, you remember what he said when Goliath started teasing him? Goliath goes, "Am I some dog? You're going to come out with a stick?" And David goes, "I'm coming at you in the name of God. So the world's going to know that there's a God in Israel." He always believed that God had his back. And God was going to protect him. Now, this word anointed, it's Mishia. That's where we get Messiah from. This could also be transferred then over to Jesus, as God protected Jesus. We're going to see more of this in the next psalm, but the next psalm, you really see a lot of Jesus in that psalm. So yeah, the Lord gives victory to His anointed. This, like I said, this could mean Jesus. It could also say as David as well. David won a lot of battles. He was the warrior king. God really protected him, gave him victory a lot of times.
What were you going to say about the anointed? Was there another word for anointed?
No, that's, well,
Yes.
yeah. So in David's time, they would literally anoint people with oil. They pour oil on people. David was anointed as king. Saul was actually anointed as king. It meant that they were chosen by God and set apart. So that's why when David and Saul were having their troubles, David would never touch Saul because he saw Saul as God's anointed. He wouldn't touch God's anointed.
In fact, when Saul was slain, the guy that said that he did the job got executed for.
Yeah, so this guy saw Saul. I think Saul committed suicide. No, Saul got killed.
No, Saul did commit suicide. He fell on his own sword.
Right. So this guy sees this, and he goes running back to tell David because he thinks he's going to tell David some good news, and he's going to get like a reward or something. And David has him killed. Verse 7. "Some trust in chariots and some in horses, but we trust in the name of the Lord our God." A modern version of that might be, some trust in tanks and some trust in airplanes, or some trust in nuclear bombs, but we trust in God. That's where our real protection comes from. It doesn't matter what the enemy has in their arsenal as long as you got God on your side.
Yeah.
God will protect us as individuals.
Yeah.
But he won't protect our country, because our country is just not giving up on it.
Yeah, our country could be headed for, the whipping shed. We might need to go through something to get the people to turn back to him.
But we already went through it.
No, apparently not.
We do
Well, if you
something.
look back, remember, guys, us older folks in here, remember 9/11 when they had the terrorist attack, right?
Yeah.
What did that do to the country? That one attack brought the whole country rallying to God. Didn't matter what denomination you were, we were all praying to God to protect the country. Didn't matter what political affiliation you were. My point is, though, God's probably going to bring something our way that's going to bring the country back together. I don't know what it is. It's probably not going to be an enjoyable experience for us, but it will probably bring the country back together. Any questions on Psalm 20? Nope. All right. Let's move on to Psalm 21. For the director of music, a psalm of David. The king rejoices in your strength, Lord. How great is his joy in the victories you give. You have granted him his heart's desire and have not withheld the request of his lips. You came to greet him with rich blessings and place a crown of pure gold on his head. He asked you for life, and you gave it to him, length of days forever and ever. Through the victories you gave, his glory is great. You have bestowed on him splendor and majesty. Surely you have granted him unending blessings and made him glad with the joy of your presence. For the king trusts in the Lord. Through the unfailing love of the Most High, he will not be shaken. Your hand will lay hold on all your enemies. Your right hand will seize your foes. When you appear for battle, you will burn them up as in a blazing furnace. The Lord will swallow them up in his wrath, and his fire will consume them. You will destroy their descendants from the earth, their posterity from mankind. Though they plot evil against you and devise wicked schemes, they cannot succeed. You will make them turn their backs when you aim at them with drawn bow. Be exalted in your strength, Lord. We will sing and praise your might. So again, looking at this is kind of like after the battle, they're praising God for the victories.
I feel like this kind of answers that question, though. God will deal with the evil,
Oh yeah.
even now.
No, God will deal with evil. There's no doubt about that.
What did you say, Jenny? I can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. This, I feel like, answers the question that God will deal with the evil, even now that we're having to come against our country and the world.
Is the air conditioner too loud?
So in verse 1 where it says the king, what king are they talking about? Are they talking about David or are they talking about Jesus?
These guys would have been talking about David,
Okay.
but this could refer to Jesus as well. This is a long time before Jesus.
Oh.
So the people, Israel was looking for a Messiah, but they didn't know who that was going to be exactly. So when they were singing this, they were singing it to King David. So the king rejoices in your strength, Lord. How great is his joy in the victories you give. Again, when you have Lord in all capitals, we went over this a few weeks back, that's Yahweh. That's the personal God of Israel, the creator God. Not the Adonai, the Lord and Master. This is more almost like the father figure of Israel, or the husband of Israel, depending on how they really want to look at that relationship.
How did David find the Lord? How did he become such a beautiful man? Did the Lord
I'm
come to
assuming
him?
through his upbringing. We know that in his youth, he had to deal with a lot of things where God protected him, and he saw that as God protecting
And it
him,
was God protecting him.
like fighting wild animals and stuff with nothing but a stick.
They don't have the Bible. They didn't have.
They had the early scriptures, but they wouldn't have each had their own. They would have had a synagogue where they would have gone, and the whole community would have talked about the scriptures. So, in their synagogues, kind of like you guys coming here for church service, they would go there for their. It would have been on a Sabbath, on a Saturday, and someone would get up and they'd read a passage and they'd all just talk about it and discuss it. If they had an actual rabbi, a teacher come through, then they would allow him to speak on whatever passage you wanted to teach on or what have you. But the kids, in the earliest stages, as far as we know, the kids learned to read and write so they could read the scriptures. And that's something you need to be aware of, because a lot of people will say, like, even in Jesus' time, that the people were illiterate, that the average man couldn't read and write. But that wasn't true for the Jewish community. The Jewish community taught all their, at least their men, their males, but also the girls too, to be able to read the scriptures. I think we're on verse 2. You granted him his heart's desire and have not withheld the request of his lips. So going back to Psalm 20, it appears his heart's desire was to win this victory, this battle against whatever enemy. It doesn't specify. But I'm kind of glad it doesn't specify, because then we can take that into our own battles. We can be praying, Lord, help us with this struggle or whatever it is, whether it's finances, addictions, health problems, or a physical person that's trying to beat you.
Relationship problems.
Relationship, yeah, all that, you can pray for God's victory in that. Verse 3, you came to greet him with rich blessings and place a crown of pure gold on his head. Again, this is referring back to King David.
Okay, I'm confused.
Yeah.
So who are you? Who is you?
You is God.
Yeah,
Lord.
they're
So they're saying,
praising God in this.
okay,
This whole psalm is about praising God for giving them the victory. They're
okay,
thanking God or blessing God for giving them the victory.
okay. And who is saying this to the Lord?
The people of Israel.
Okay, okay.
This would have been a song that they could have sang collectively.
Hmm.
What you got?
I was just like, David wrote it.
Yeah. That's what I was saying with the first one, with Psalm 20. I think he believed so much in the power of prayer that he wrote that song so that people could be praying for him as he went into battle. It's easier a lot of times to remember like song lyrics than it is just a list of things. So if you put into a song, people are singing it, it helps them to remember what to pray for and stuff. Verse 4, he asked you for life and you gave it to him. Length of days forever and ever. So we're really going to start seeing how Jesus can come into this now. Granted, King David lived a long life, and God protected him from an early death with Saul and several of his enemies. But Jesus is the one who had power over life, who was the authority of life, if you will. Verse 5. Through the victories you gave, his glory is great. You have bestowed on him splendor and majesty. Again, King David or Jesus, because Jesus, he's got the ultimate glory. He's got the ultimate majesty. He's the King of all kings, Lord of all lords. Surely you have granted him unending blessings and made him glad with the joy of your presence.
So David is writing this about himself?
I think so, yeah.
But he's writing it for the chief musician.
Yeah, he's writing it so the people can sing it.
Mm-hmm.
So he wrote it before the battle.
He wrote verse 20 before the battle, Psalm 20 before the battle, 21 after the battle.
Oh, okay.
Or if he was that confident, he may have written 21 before the battle. It's like, yeah, we're going to sing this as soon as we win. Yeah, we don't have anything that tells us exactly when he wrote it. But verse 7, for the king trusts in the Lord. Through the unfailing love of the Most High, he will not be shaken. Again, you can look at Jesus and his life. We know he is God. And I know we're going to get into the whole Trinity and people get confused, but we can see several times in Jesus' life where he yielded to God the Father. His trust was in what God the Father's will was. Verse 8, your hand will lay hold on all your enemies. Your right hand will seize your foes. Continuing on down, when you appear for battle, you will burn them up as in a blazing furnace. The Lord will swallow them up in his wrath, and his fire will consume them. So again, it doesn't matter what your enemies have in their arsenal. If you got God on your side, God can do all kinds of things. He can rain down fire. He can swallow them in the earth.
I wonder if in some of those battles they were both praying to God, thinking that he was on their side. Two different sides, you know what I mean?
Kind of like when you have football teams and they're both praying here for the victory. Yeah.
Well, when you know that the other person is God's anointed, it's like, oh, we're done.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't think the other side, I think that maybe people came to the Lord that were on the other side, but I think that people were like, that's not real, we don't have to worry about it.
A few Psalms back, we talked about, there's one in there where David says, they were asking for your help, asking God for help, his enemies were, but God didn't grant it. I think that was with his personal struggles with Saul, is what that psalm was about. But if anybody was against Israel, God was against them. And still the same way.
Still today, right?
That promise did not get revoked. God says, those who bless you, I will bless. Those who curse you, I will curse. So any enemy that came across Israel, it doesn't matter if they're praying to God or not. Verse 10, you will destroy their descendants from the earth, their posterity from mankind. Some of you guys remember back in the 80s, we had the Cold War going on, right? So Russia's building up their arsenal. U.S. is building up our arsenal. You know what kind of made everybody come to peace over that whole thing? The possibility of total annihilation. That everybody was going to get wiped out. With Russia, they believe that you kind of live on through your descendants. So if your name is wiped out, then your family line is wiped out forever. So that total annihilation hit them, the thought of that hit them harder than it did for us. Most of Russia is not Christian, if you will. They're very much atheistic. They don't like religion at all. Now, there is the Russian Orthodox Church. I'm not saying that every Russian is atheist. But in general, the country and the leadership don't believe in God.
They don't show a lot of churches.
Right. So when we had that whole Cold War thing going on, there was a very real possibility that both sides were just going to annihilate each other. Most of us Christian folks in the United States were like, we're going to a better place. And Russia's kind of looking at that and it's like, these guys might actually do it. And so that's when they started backing off. We started getting a lot of the peace treaties going on. What they're saying is basically any enemy that comes against Israel, they're going to be completely wiped out. And we don't hear a lot about a lot of the enemies that we read in the Bible. They are gone. We don't know of any descendants.
Oh, yeah.
Verse 11, though they plot evil against you and devise wicked schemes, they cannot succeed. So again, these enemies of Israel, they're plotting against God even. And they definitely aren't going to succeed. If you're plotting against God, you're not going to win. Let's move on to verse 12, I think. You'll make them turn their backs when you aim your bow when you aim at them with drawn bow. The bow here is a symbol of strength. And we'll see that bow again, like in Revelation. There's some different places where it shows up. It's just a symbol of strength, of power. And what he's saying is, when you show that you're ready to annihilate our enemies, they're just going to run. So when they're getting ready for a battle, and all of a sudden this massive storm comes up with lightning bolts and stuff, the enemy split.
Peace through strength.
Yeah. Which president was it that said, speak softly but carry a big stick?
Teddy Roosevelt.
Roosevelt, there you go, thanks. Verse 13, be exalted in your strength, Lord. We will sing and praise your might. Again, this is the Yahweh. This is another word for the God of Israel, their personal God. So be exalted in your strength. We will sing praise of your might. And we should all that too. If you see God working, we should be singing praises, right?
I usually just stop and say thank you, God, over and over and over.
That's good too. Remember when Jesus healed a bunch of, I think they were lepers, and only one of them came back to thank him. And he makes note of that. It's like, what happened to all the other guys that got healed? And this foreigner is the one that comes back and thanks me. So we should always approach God with a thankful heart for what he's given us. Any other questions on 21? Okay. So I guess to round this out, we should pray before we go into battle. It doesn't matter what the battle is, and we should be very thankful and praise God for the victories in that battle. So thank you, and bye YouTube.